our sun lifetime. Astronomers charted the sun's life, and this is how they claim the story will end. One day our sun will die out, and since we happen to be the inhabitants of the sun's planetary system, the third planet from the sun, the question of when and how this will happen, of course, is of interest to us. Sure, we're unlikely to be around to see it, but who knows? We may be. It's our home. We want to know what will eventually become of our home. Mere curiosity aside, models of stellar evolution can help us understand the cosmos and our place in it. If we don't understand our own sun, and there are many things we don't know about it, how can we expect to understand all of the other stars that make up our wonderful galaxy? This is what astronomer Lag Creevy of Observatoire de la Côte d'Azur in France says. We already know in some detail that what will happen to our sun's future. It will continue to grow hotter over the next few billion years, eventually running out of hydrogen to fuse in its core. The core will start to contract, the process that brings more hydrogen into the region immediately around the core, forming a hydrogen shell. This hydrogen then starts to fuse, dumping helium into the core in a process called shell burning. This is assuming that it's all a linear time scale, as opposed to logarithmically faster. Now, during this, the outer atmosphere of the sun will expand by a lot, maybe even as far as the orbit of Mars, turning it into a real giant, red giant. Eventually, it will run out of hydrogen and helium, eject out all its outer material to form a planetary nebula, and the core will collapse down into a white dwarf, which could take trillions of years to cool down completely. But the timing of the end of the main sequence depends on the individual characteristics of each star. As far as our own sun goes, the ballpark figure of when things will go south, meaning end, could always use more evidence. The best way to find that is by searching the Milky Way for sun-like stars at different stages of their lives, and then weaving them into a timeline that models our own stars' past and future. With the latest release of data from the European Space Agency's Gaia Milky Way mapping project, we now have the most detailed timeline of our sun's life yet. Gaia's primary mission is to map the Milky Way with the highest precision yet, and it's equipped with a suite of instruments for that task. It tracks the positions and motions of stars in the sky, while taking detailed observations of each star's brightness and spectral classification. These values can be used to determine factors like chemical composition and temperature. They can also be plotted on a graph known as the Hertzsprung-Russell diagram, which gives an estimate of the star's age. A star's mass, you see, does not really change as it ages, but its temperature does, while significantly based on the nuclear fusion taking place in the stellar core, which is observed as changes in brightness take place. Our sun is classified as a G-type main sequence star, or a yellow dwarf, even though it's not actually yellow, and is a fairly typical example of its kind. It's about 4.57 billion years old, or about halfway through its main sequence lifespan. It's also capable of core thermonuclear fusion, generating a surface temperature of 5,772 degrees Kelvin. This means that looking at other G-type stars should give us a pretty good idea of how our sun might continue to burn fuel and when it might eventually fizzle out. Creevy and her team initially started combing the Gaia data because they wanted precision observations of stars with relatively cooler temperatures between 3,000 and 10,000 degrees Kelvin. That's because lower temperature stars tend to be smaller and live longer than the hotter ones. Looking at cooler stars, therefore, can potentially reveal more about the history and stellar evolution of the Milky Way and the wider universe. Because this temperature range includes stars like our sun, the data could be used to zero in on stars with a similar mass and chemical composition as our sun, and this results in 5,863 sun-like stars across the entire Hertzsprung-Russell diagram from very young to very old. By identifying only the most sun-like stars, Creevy and her colleagues were able to confirm the timing of its demise. Broadly consistent with previous projections of the sun's lifespan, its temperature will peak at around 8 billion years of age. It will transform into a red giant star at about 10 billion to 11 billion years of age. Life on Earth, for the record, only has about a billion years left, unless we do something catastrophically stupid or something catastrophic happens to us. That's because the sun is increasing in brightness by about 10% every billion years. 10% every billion years it increases in brightness, which means it also increases in temperature. That change sounds small, but it will render Earth uninhabitable to life as we know it. It's going to be too hot. Everything will be melting. We won't even have any water. It will evaporate. Now, so that's cheery, but there's still work to do. The new Gaia catalog of sun-like stars could tell us more about how and why we are even here to start with. We can learn if sun-like stars all behave the same way, for instance. And more importantly, look for more planetary systems that look like the solar system. At the moment, we've not found any system that seems capable of harboring technologically advanced life as we know it. But the answers are out there if we can find them. And this is on Science Alert by Michelle Starr. Please leave your comments. Thank you for your support. Kindly support my Patreon account. The daily posts are 5 videos daily, and they are totally different from what I have on my YouTube channel. Thank you so much for your support and that you find all my content so interesting. You'll find the Patreon account details in the description box below.